In this presentation, I will report on a collaboration between the University of Waikato in New Zealand and the University of York in the United Kingdom, in which the two universities delivered a cross-institutional peer observation programme for distance learning tutors, building on the long-standing agreement of cooperation and staff exchange which exists between the two institutions. The programme was conducted fully online between March and September 2015, with participants critiquing their partners' asynchronous tutoring practice. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the important contribution of Dr. Diane Forbes of Waikato University, who jointly coordinated this programme with me and the research underpinning the paper. Diane and I were keen to explore the potential of peer observation for tutor development across our respective institutions and work together on this initiative. Our starting point was a shared recognition of the challenges facing online tutors. Although digital learning methods are now a key element in all forms of course delivery, there are varying levels of confidence and pedagogic skills when it comes to staff engaging with and facilitating online learning. For new tutors, such as recently graduated students with first-hand experience of digital methods, the learning curve in developing appropriate tutoring skills may not be as steep as that facing established teaching staff, in keeping pace with technological changes and developing appropriate pedagogies to support online learners. For the more experienced classroom teachers, the adaptation process may require more fundamental change. The unlearning of traditional pedagogies, as McWilliam has described it, moving from one-to-many transmissive approaches to alternative models which embrace the affordances of the online environment, supporting learning networks, communities, and other collaborative engagement modes. Bennett and Marsh maintain that this challenge of adaptation will currently be faced by the majority of our tutors who do not have a personal background of online learning experience to draw upon to inform their practice. Research tells us that tutoring craft requires differing strategies and dimensions of instructional support to facilitate effective group learning and participant-led activities. This may encourage instructors to assume different roles in their online interactions with students, as Danielson and Nielsen have found in their own studies of online learning, from subject expert to process-oriented supervisor and online therapist, addressing students' working methods and approach to collaborative activity. Reflection on tutoring identity can play a key part in helping staff to make sense of the strategies they will use to manage online learning, and this appears to be particularly relevant to classroom teachers making the transition to online tutoring roles. In this sense, the process of reflecting on tutoring identity represents an important corrective to how-to training and support interventions, which focus on technology first, how to master the tools, rather than how to approach support for learning and the art of facilitation. As Kirkwood and Price from the UK Open University have argued, we should be encouraging tutors to build closer associations between learning, teaching and technology to inform their practice, inspiring changes which, in turn, transform the online learning experience. This requires a re-examination of existing teaching and learning methods. But how do we go about creating the opportunities for tutors to review the practice in this way? Arguably, peer observation, the developmental rather than performance-related variety, may provide a solution to this staff development challenge. There's been a growing interest in developmental peer observation techniques and their application to online tutoring across the UK higher education sector, at the UK's Open University, Hull, Staffordshire and York, as a way of providing tutors with a space to reflect and develop themselves through critical dialogue and the sharing of perspectives. Dialogue is key to this process, with partners serving as mirrors, mentors or critical friends. As part of this process, participants are empowered to determine how they want to engage in the process and the objectives that they wish to focus on. At York, we've previously run 3 institutional peer observation programs for our online tutors, bringing together staff from different program teams and disciplines to discuss strategies for discussion management, activity design, and other facets of online tutoring practice. With Diane's involvement as a fellow coordinator and previous participant on one of our programs, we were keen to see how the peer observation program could work when extending participation to include partners from different institutions. The novelty of the approach certainly attracted enthusiasm at the outset, as the quotations in the slide suggest. with participants highlighting the value of working with partners from different institutional cultures, with fresh perspectives on tutoring and insights into distance learning delivery. And this, of course, enabled them also to track new developments in distance learning. And they cited these as motivating factors in their decision to join the programme. The design of the programme was informed by the Kool-Aid model. Kool-Aid stands for Collaborative Observation in the Online Environment for Enhancement Across Institutional Divides. This was a cross-institutional peer observation project delivered by the Universities of Hull and Staffordshire in the UK. We followed a similar approach to Kool-Aid, with a strong focus on personal development, with individuals opting into the programme and determining the objectives and form of feedback that they would receive, with control over the future actions they would take. The distinctive features for the York Waikato programme, as illustrated on the right-hand side of the table, were to extend the range of choice over the conditions for participation, enabling participants to decide whether they wanted to work with an institutional or external partner, sharing outside the family, as one participant dubbed it. To encourage all modes of participation, we also enabled choice over the role they would perform, observer or observee, or a reciprocal relationship. Although participants were invited to articulate any matching criteria that they wanted us to consider, they could not directly select a partner, and matching was left up to the coordinators to manage. This was a practical measure, given the limited numbers we were dealing with and the diversity of teaching backgrounds involved. We had 17 participants on the programme, 10 from York and 7 from Waikato, reflecting a wide range of disciplines and tutoring experiences, from tutors getting to grips with a new course for the first time, right the way through to experienced programme directors who've been teaching online for many years. 9 pairings were matched, with 8 involving cross-institutional matches, of which 7 involved reciprocal observations, where participants both observed and gave feedback on their partner's online course. The observation process was directed to looking at a live or archived course within the institutional learning management system, and most commonly focused on asynchronous tutoring and course design methods, although participants were free to reflect on use of other tools, media, and tutor-student engagement modes online. We launched the programme in March 2015. Drawing on lessons learnt from previous York programmes, participants were provided with guidance on how to prepare for the observation and exchange feedback with their partner, following a 4-step engagement model. Indicative timelines were given for each step, as you can see in the slide illustration. The only hard and fast requirements for participants were to complete a pro forma, confirming their objectives for the observation, and this was done before the actual start of the observation. And then to engage in a reflective discussion on their experience at the end of the process for our research, discussing what they were going to do next as part of their personal change agenda. Focusing on the 8 cross-institutional relationships, they all involve participants working in different time zones, using a combination of email and synchronous communication tools such as Appear-In and Skype to support their exchange. Partners were free to determine their own way of working, with 3 engagement models emerging, as illustrated in the slide, ranging from an instrumental, task-focused model to the collaborative models, which were rapport-based, focusing on shared objectives or evolving objectives as the discussion and exchange of teaching practice developed through regular meetings and conversation. The key distinction between the engagement models was in the way that pairings approached their first synchronous conversation, which was used either as a get-to-know-you to build rapport, or simply approached as a procedural dialogue to confirm arrangements for how the observation would run. Another key difference was the way in which objectives for the observation were identified, either individually and then conveyed to a partner with a focus on how they could be addressed through the observation, or identified through collaborative discussion with a partner first, as part of a search for common ground and shared interests. The frequency of synchronous meetings was also important. One pairing conducted 3 online meetings which were used to build rapport, negotiate a framework, and establish guidelines for how they would approach the peer observation and then discuss the feedback that they'd received from each other. For another pairing, the relationship was the focus of the exchange, rather than the individual objectives for a specific course. Multiple meetings were used to address issues that they were facing in their day-to-day practice. We found that the strength of the bond established between partners at the outset appears to have had a bearing on the extent to which partners explored issues beyond the objectives agreed and recorded in the pro forma. Task-focused participants, such as the one on the left in the slide, stuck closely to the questions that their partner had identified in their observation contract when observing and returning feedback, managing their time accordingly. Observees reported receiving valuable insights for consideration in their own practice, such as tips on how to build in interaction to recorded lectures through links to case studies, assignments and discussion activities. In some cases, the feedback confirmed a solution to a problem that the observee had already identified through personal reflection. Rapport-based pairings, such as the one on the right, demonstrated greater freedom to go beyond the stated objectives, to explore other areas of tutoring practice. This was evidenced through a more open review of a partner's online site, with the observer capturing what she or he felt to be important elements of the observed practice. The frequency of conversations in rapport-based pairings enabled participants to circle back and develop themes of interest, leading to more detailed questioning and challenge on personal tutoring styles and institutional tutoring norms, as illustrated in the quotation. In terms of the themes that were discussed, partners tended to identify similar topics to those explored in previous York programs, such as strategies for managing asynchronous discussion online. This was not altogether surprising, given the guidance that was made available to participants beforehand, pointing to previous York peer observation topics. The cross-institutional dimension did, though, encourage partners to reflect more deeply on the cultural and institutional values underpinning their tutoring practice, moving beyond operational concerns. Differences in communication style in the peer exchanged, as experienced by the Waikato tutor in the quotation, appeared to provoke a deeper personal analysis of tutor identity and authenticity when engaging with students, a distinctive and valuable takeaway from the peer exchange. Discussion on activity design, another common theme from previous York programs, helped to shine a light on institutional norms, or to be more precise, the perception of those norms by participants, challenging established thinking on what is permissible by the rules and of value to students to support their learning, providing participants with fresh ideas to take back to their program teams. As the quotation from a York tutor on the left suggests, the variation in assessment methods that he observed and the relative freedom of students to shape the assessments that they were engaging in were insightful, providing useful points of reflection which he could take back to discuss with his program colleagues. Exposure to diversity in approaches to course design and the choice of technology also prompted personal reflection, encouraging critical insights into a participant's own practice, as well as practical takeaways on how to do things differently, such as approaches to branding and customization of a course site, as illustrated in this quotation. In determining the value of cross-institutional and cross-cultural exchanges, some balance is of course needed in the appraisal, as reflected in this table. Not all feedback that partners received was directly transferable, owing to misunderstandings by the observer of the context of the course that was being reviewed, or a lack of appreciation of the constraints which the observee faced in implementing the recommended changes, such as institutional policy or a fixed assessment design that the course needed to follow. Practical challenges also emerged in managing the relationship across different time zones and through the use of different institutional platforms, overcoming access issues to course sites through different learning management systems. Where exchanges were effective, participants commented on the value of the outsider perspective and the broader discussion that this generated, free from institutional agendas. This was conveyed in terms of a sense of having nothing to lose in giving open and frank feedback to an unfamiliar and physically remote colleague, Receiving such feedback was also highly valued, appearing to be more authentic than that received from familiar colleagues. As one York tutor put it, "I probably value it more than the feedback from my own colleagues, as you're never quite sure if you're getting the whole truth. People like to be nice. It's easier to be more objective with people you don't know." In some cases, this usefully addressed personal blind spots. In other cases, it affirmed positive features of their practice, such as academic freedoms that they had not fully appreciated before. Summing up what we've learned from participants, there appears to be a range of variables influencing the development of these online relationships, shaping the effectiveness and scope of the peer exchanges that emerge. Personal values appear to be key to this process and need to be aligned with the developmental process for an effective exchange to take place. By personal values, we mean here a growth mindset and curiosity to learn, a willingness to pick up ideas either through observation of another person's practice, stimulating reflection on one's own, or from feedback conveyed by an observer, which might lead to discussion on alternative tutoring techniques and strategies. Investment of time to the development of the relationship also appears to be important. A personal commitment to develop rapport and establish common ground to inform future dialogue, as a precursor to the observation process itself. Wide-ranging and enduring exchanges between partners occurred where this investment had been made up front. There are also, of course, a range of practical considerations, such as flexibility to manage the inevitable differences in institutional calendars, determining what can be observed and by when, and of course, to negotiate time zones when engaging in dialogue with a partner. Combined also with adequate preparation to master the telescopic, big picture, and microscopic operational perspectives of an observed course, as one Waikato tutor referred to them, to ensure that feedback to a partner is informed and dialogue can be meaningful, underpinned by the realities of a partner's institutional and program culture. If you're interested in finding out more about the experiences of tutors on our program and how the cross-institutional dynamic to peer observation played out, please take a look at the YouTube video following the displayed link on the slide, where a York tutor reflects on his own experiences. You will also see a link to the guidance resources that we make available to participants, which provides the context to last year's programme. We are committed to exploring how cross-institutional peer observation can benefit our tutors, and consequently we're running a second programme this year, with institutional participation extended to Otago Polytechnic. We'll endeavour to track how these collaborations work and update our findings on guidelines for cross-institutional peer mentoring. Thanks for following the presentation. Any questions or comments on peer observation would be most welcome.